Hello, folks. This is Dr. Arik Greenberg, and I'm here to say some words about the newest book in my trilogy. This is the Exile trilogy. This is the first of the series, and yes, I know this is backwards. I still haven't gotten a chance to figure out why the camera is broadcasting everything backwards, but I assure you the book is actually printed forwards, so you can read it. Anyway, the Exile is the first in the trilogy. I Am the Exile is the second book in the trilogy, also printed forward. But the one that I'm talking about right now, and I'm going to do a little reading from this, is the third book, A Necromantic Incantation and an Angry Love Letter to God. And this is one of the author proofs right now. So it will look almost like this, but it won't have this nasty little band over here. So I'm just going to read a little bit from that today, maybe about 5 or 10 minutes. We'll see how much it takes. But this is from chapter 19, which is called, it's sort of a long title. Chapter 19, You Can Never Go Home, but Can Home Come With You on Your Journey? All right. And so this is from part of that chapter. July 6th, we left for our 2016 New York trip. I had a sad and disturbing dream the night before leaving about being with Mom and Dad again at the house. Dad was still alive and not yet diagnosed with dementia. He said to Mom that he had forgotten how to get to a place he needed to drive and had driven every day for years. This concerned me and replicated how I felt when we began to suspect he was suffering from dementia. It was like dealing with it for the first time all over again. I approached Dad and he said, like he had in real life shortly before we had to hospitalize him for dementia, "Lee, please don't forget me." I replied tearfully and sincerely, "Dad, I can't live without you. I can't live without either you or Mom. How could I live without you? How can I ever live without you?" I asked the latter again and again like a mantra. With that, the dream was done. As usual, I awoke terribly affected by this dream. I had been very trepidatious about how I would feel coming to New York. After I departed LA and began our descent into LaGuardia, I imagined that my ancestors, Murgits and Slavics, men of substance who helped build New York, men like Great Uncle Marty, whose life was lost at Normandy, and Great Grandpa Andy, and many others, stood judging me with stern faces and square Slavic and Bohemian and Alsatian jaws and flat faces, saying, "We built this land for you to live in, and you left us. You abandoned us, turned your back on us, and now we turn our backs on you. You are now an outsider, an Ausländer. What have you to do with us or this land? You are no longer one of us. You are no longer a New Yorker." And my eyes welled up with tears as I watched them turn their backs on me in my mind's eye. With condemnations like these from my very roots, how can I compete? How can I ever hope to come back? I often think that those who are able to build buildings and edifices and bridges have a true mastery over their adulthood, over their humanity. Who else can build something that big? They must be grown-ups. Everyone else among us is like children. Of course, I know this to be fundamentally wrong, as many of the wealthiest and most accomplished who have been able to build something that big are merely children inside. And it takes more than one person to do it. There is not just one builder who creates a skyscraper. There are many people, many workers, many foremen and architects who contribute to such a task. It is never undertaken alone. So this is a fallacy, but it looms over my head like a preconceived notion about who is really in charge. And I look upon my grandfather as someone who was able to build so much. He was among the many builders at mid-level who polished marble and took part in the erection of lasting monuments like the Chrysler Building and the Empire State Building, and he outfitted warships with their crucial plumbing, and he then built over 40 houses on Long Island before retiring. How can I compete with that? A simple teacher and unaccomplished unknown writer. What have I done? I fixed some sinks and toilets in grad school and helped renovate some buildings on campus with their electrical wires, and I helped frame a few home additions here and there. But I built nothing. I was an amateur, a laborer, a hack. What have I really built? I have often heard it said that you can never go home. My parents were my home when they were alive. They were my connection to my roots, my identity. I had always felt as if Long Island were my home, as long as I had the house there. I had convinced myself that as long as I could save the house, as long as I held on to the house as a landlord, keeping it as my sole connection to my New York roots and family, that I would prevent myself from becoming a permanent exile from my homeland. But now, even if I were to go home to the house, I was sure that I would forever be an exile. There's a hole in my soul where part of my heart was taken away on a bright sunny day when I realized that I would forever be, no matter where, nothing more than an exile. But as Melissa and I stood on the Long Island Railroad platform in Woodside in Queens, arriving on the shuttle bus from the airport and waiting for the train to take us into Belmore to stay with the Murgotts, I could not help but imagine my father meeting my mother here for a date 50 years beforehand, perhaps to see a show or a play or a movie, or to hear some great unknown jazz musician, or to take her to a dinner far too expensive for his salary as a reimbursement agent at the Kings Park State Mental Hospital. How they might meet here, halfway between her nighttime graduate school classes at Columbia Teachers College and where she lived in Wantagh at the time. How they might have seen these very same streets at night in the balmy Long Island summer nights, with people cluttering the streets, vehicles from an earlier era than the ones I peered down on from the elevated train platform now in 2016. And my reverie was broken by the macho shout of an irate motorist yelling to another driver who had yet to turn his headlights on in the darkness. "Yo, put your lights on, asshole!" And the humorous shock of this dragged me back to my decade, knowing that such kind of language might not have been as common in the streets back then, being slightly more genteel in public than nowadays. But the gruff, aggressive, earthy New York attitude had not changed since the days my grandfather was building his family's livelihood, along with at least 40 houses on Long Island. I was indeed glad to be home, and I felt as if my ancestors had once again turned their faces toward me. Maybe they had never really turned away, or perhaps their displeasure was not so much at my leaving, but at my inability to realize that I would never truly leave them behind. "We are your ancestors," they might say to me. "We are proud of what you have become in an age so different from ours, but no less of a man who struggles and strives to be honorable to the family name and to make a place for himself in the world. We are one with you no matter where you go. We are in your genes, in your blood. But for now, you are back at home with us on your island, the land where your fathers died, land of the Murgotts' pride." And in my mind, I continued the reverie, but in my own voice, the voice of my higher reason. You fear that the home could be taken away from you with the capricious and vindictive stroke of a pen, or through a mistake of paperwork, that the loss of the house would be as the loss of yet a third parent. But as your mother-in-law said, this act of saving the house was nothing less than heroic. You are, for all intents and purposes, and within reason, out of the woods. The home is yours. It is protected. You will one day reside there again, but for now, you must continue the path and ensure its safety. So that's just a short section from You Can Never Go Home, but Can Home Come With You on Your Journey, chapter 19 of A Necromantic Incantation. And of course, as I said, it is printed forward, not backward like the camera is showing. Anyway, I'll leave off there. It's been 8 minutes and 45 seconds. I'll make this brief. I will continue to do some of these readings a little bit more frequently, make them a little bit more impromptu, but I'll keep these up on YouTube, try to put them on Facebook, try to put them on Twitter. But anyway, enjoy. And once again, you can get this book and any of the 3 books in the trilogy. You can get them on Amazon under my name, Dr. Arik Greenberg. It is the Exile trilogy, the first book of which, once again, is The Exile, A Devoted Son's Spiritual Journey. The second book is I Am the Exile, book 2 of the Exile trilogy. And then the third book is A Necromantic Incantation and an Angry Love Letter to God. And this is put out by Enlightened Religion Press. All right, thanks so much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day. God bless.